Trayambakam yajamahe Sugandhim pushtivardhanam urvarugamiva bandhanam Mrityurmukshiyamamritat 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 Trayambakam yajamahe Sugandhim. Om Shanti. Warm welcome to tonight's session interview with the Raj Yogi, and the theme will be soft power. So we'll start with a reflection. There is a saying that the more you try to control something, the more that thing will control you. And this very physical, external, almost violent concept of power. But I bring into my mind's eye the image of a tiny, concentrated seed. I know within that seed there is tremendous potential power. An entire tree will emerge from that single seed. But in the seed form, it appears nothing is going on. The seed is planted in the ground, a very quiet, silent place, and surrenders to the sustenance it receives, absorbing all the nutrients, and patient. And in time, the power begins to emerge. The seed is not trying or forcing, just from receiving sustenance in that very concentrated form. Beautiful things begin to emerge as if on their own. I take myself into a similar place now. a place internally that is calm, simple, silent, still. And I sit my attention there in a very concentrated but patient way, as if I am that tiny seed of potential. And what form will the sustenance take that will naturally draw out that potential? That is what I am to discover. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Good evening to those online. Good evening, Judy. So, tonight, and perhaps from here on, we're experimenting with taking a topic each week. However, for those who are online, or if you're watching this later in the future, if any questions come up, those online, please feel free to enter those into the chat box. Or you can also email the center as well. And if there are certain topics that come to mind, let us know. And so the intention of these topics actually is to move into more of a practical application. And souls have actually mentioned for numerous times, as we noticed in the courses, that how do I bring what I'm learning into something that's actually practical, but to serve the intention of what Raja Yoga is about, is transformation, is about soul consciousness. It's not just an intellectual exercise. So our interview is really about practically we learn about soul consciousness. What does that look like? What's going on inside in my thinking, in my awareness, in day-to-day applications? And how is it actually, am I applying what I've learned in Raja Yoga? Or perhaps maybe I'm using other things, and that's fine if that's what I want. But if my intent of using Raja Yoga is for the experience and sense of reality of being a soul, I'm going to check in. Is that what's happening? Because if it is, there would be some clear signs. And so the intent of these topics are actually for practical application. And so we wanted to make that clear as well, because Raja Yoga Essentials on Thursdays is certainly looking at the core principles of it. But what does that actually look like? So tonight's theme is soft power. And that's a very important topic. I would feel it's time, because we have ideas of what power looks like. And often souls feel like spirituality is kind of powerless. So maybe just that first thing, like, what is soft power? What is power?
It's quite ironic, saying that souls feel spirituality is powerless or ineffectual, because I think many souls are feeling powerless right now. So without even perhaps engaging in any spiritual practice, they just feel powerless. And so because our concept of power is the capacity to control, very specifically to control things outside of myself. So, the power to make people do what I want them to do, or the power to make outcomes happen that I want to happen, or the power to control, use my mind to control the weather, and all sorts of very interesting things. And I suppose at some level, eventually, just given the law of karma, that power will manifest in the external world. But there's two things about, I think, real power, really powerful souls. And I always enjoyed that concept. This sounds like something that actually Nora would share, that concept of the martial artist, who trains so much and looks so powerful, but they actually aren't going to exert any force or violence or control over anyone or anything. That's actually their power, is to not have to do that. And I remember being in my early 20s and I was very pulled. This was before coming quite formally into a spiritual practice. I was pulled. I'd like to get up in the fairly early anyways. I thought it was a beautiful time of the day, just as the sun was rising. I was in university and I would go and just do some wake up movement in one of the halls. It was very an old campus, so the buildings were romantic and beautiful, and the light would stream through the stained glass, and you felt like you were in a movie. It was very surreal. And I was usually alone, but every once in a while, another young student would join, and we would never really acknowledge or interact. We're very respectful of each other's space and solitude. I think that's why we wanted to be there. But under the corner of the eye, I sort of would notice what the soul was doing. And I was absolutely, touched actually by what I felt. Not just saw, but really felt, because it was clear this soul was physically very strong. That was clear. But there was such a gentleness in their and control of the self in their movement. I felt they were using that physical power in such a healthy and gentle way. So the two aspects of power that I felt and really have been refined through Raj Yoga is, one is a force for benevolent or healthy outcomes. That's really important. So something healthy or benevolent. So a power to kill or destroy or to harm, I wouldn't use the word power. Actually, that's a sign of weakness, actually. So the power to uplift, to elevate, to empower is true power. And second off, it always must be based on power over the self, mastery of the self. I can't express a benevolent, uplifting kind of presence unless I have a very healthy environment inside, mastery over the self. So it always starts with self mastery. And from that kind of inner control, because that inner mastery is really a mastery of my innate capacities, which are benevolent. So once I've harnessed my own benevolence, then of course all that would be expressed through me is benevolent power, true power. So those two things, self-mastery and an expression that is benevolent, to me, this is true power. The reason we say soft power, and I know this is a very common term in the corporate setting when they say soft power, soft leadership, it oddly enough tends to line up with what we traditionally understand as feminine or not corporate, feminine or maternal qualities. So very nurturing, compassionate, patient, understanding, tolerant, these kind of qualities and how powerful they are. And so I'm remembering again a memory from childhood that my physical mother had decided for herself that, and I actually still see it today, I just witnessed it the other day, that she would never raise her voice or use any kind of force to discipline us. It was a personal rule she had. She never raised her voice to us. I've never, ever heard her raise her voice. And yet there was discipline. And it was through such a soft form. It was clear, it was firm, but it was very soft and respectful. And it's very interesting going to, when I visit her now, she's in a facility, assisted living, and the way she interacts everyone as if they are her child. Like I literally feel I've been displaced because everyone's like, "Oh, thank you, dear, thank you," and I see the power, and it's not coming. She's not capable of manipulation. It's sincere, and I can see how souls bow down to her. They will do anything to make sure that she is comfortable. So, this incredible royalty and dignity and very healthy stage of the self that sort of determines how I conduct myself in the world. And then there's a return from that. So, very soft, these so called feminine or maternal qualities.
So souls are gonna probably notice a pattern. Hopefully, it's not a boring pattern, but one of the things that we're gonna constantly ask in these interviews with Raj Yogis, could be Judy, could be who knows? We might have another guest in the future, but is how is how, because how is this different? You know, any of the themes that we're actually going to talk about, that's the intent while we're talking about this as being a practical application, is how is this different? Why can't I just wake up in the morning and just know, okay, I'm going to be benevolent. Okay, I'm going to practice this soft power because I'm tired of the kind of power that we see in the world today. So, with respect to Raja Yoga, what does soul consciousness have to do with soft power? Because that leap for many in terms of soul consciousness and anything one is facing in life feels extremely irrelevant from what we always hear, actually from many who take the course, and even just regular students as well. So what is this connection between soft power and soul consciousness?
So I always find my mind going to the example of a flower. A flower has a rose has remarkable power. I mean, we see a rose and we start to feel a certain way. And it's not trying to control or manipulate; it's just being itself. But the most important or powerful part of the rose is the seed. So the rose will express that natural power to touch us and move us, but eventually that rose will die without the seed. So the rose emerged from a seed and it's able to maintain its rosiness as long as it's in the ground connected to that seed. The moment we cut it, for a short time, it's able to exert that power to move us, but eventually it dies. And so there's a big difference between putting on an act and acting from a place of power. So I can decide I'm going to go out there and be benevolent. Whatever my concept, I'm going to be this force of benevolence. I'm going to express those soft qualities of patience, nurturing, etc. And off I go. And what you will inevitably 100% find is that eventually you come up against a situation, an interaction where you say, I can't do it. I can't be benevolent. Right? It's the whole thing. It dies, just like the rose who's disconnected from its seed because it's an act. I'm trying to act a certain way without a connection to the seed that feeds that power. So the seed is the most important part of the flower. There is no flower without the seed. It emerged from that seed. So I need to have a connection to the seed. It's what makes the very authentic form of that power emerge rather than just an artificial rose. So the seed is consciousness, soul consciousness. And, I think eventually one has to experiment with it to really feel the difference between trying to just express these qualities without changing my consciousness from a very ordinary consciousness. I'm Judy being patient versus I'm going to just go into the experience of being a soul and see what happens. It's like, oh, I suddenly feel really peaceful, whatever is going on, as long as I am genuinely in that consciousness. So I don't even try to focus on what I'm going to express. My focus shifts to be the seed, because those powers naturally, without effort, emerge from the seed. But if I don't have the seed and try again to force those powers through an act, like an artificial rose or a cut rose, it will eventually die. It won't work. There will always be something I come up against. So the difference between the flower with the seed and the flower without the seed.
I feel like we are actually, coming full circle to one of the topics that came up in perhaps maybe the first or second sessions of interview with Raj Yogi is believing I'm a soul. And certainly hope that souls don't feel like this is repeating, but it is a foundation of Raja Yoga. So, what is this relationship with this faith that I am a soul and these capacities? Because even when we hear that I am a soul, you often hear the phrase, even those who've taken the course, even those who haven't taken the course, my soul. It is a very common phrase out there, and it seems like it's a small little thing, but there's a world of a difference. And so, what is this relationship between this seed? Because spirituality for many feels like it's irrelevant in life. Like, I don't have time for it. I'm not sure how that's going to help pay the bills. And it's very connected because I don't think I can experience soft power if the soul is still something outside of me, and yet we're talking about it being the seed.
Mm-hmm. The language we use in the Course is mind and intellect, different capacities that I have. Both are important. It's important to at least be on the page, to hold that thought, I am a soul. And I think to back up a little bit, why we're doing any of this is that every single human being wants to be peaceful and happy. That's kind of the whole point of all of this. Every single human being wants to be peaceful and happy. Now, everyone has their own ideas of how to do it. And okay, but then I have to sort of draw back and look at the situation in the world right now. And it's horrific. And I'm not talking about the pandemic, well before the pandemic. The way we treat ourselves and each other is really quite dysfunctional. It's a very unhappy world, a very peaceless world. As we sit here comfortably now, someone's killing someone, someone's torturing someone, someone's starving to death. Even within yourself, it doesn't have to be that extreme, but there can be, these very sort of vague forms of distress. I think most people are wandering around with low-grade anxiety. It's there's no peace or happiness, and it's a really, really quite surreal experience we've reached as a global family. If you have the courage to pull back and look at it, most don't. It's too overwhelming to look at how dire and how extreme. So the proof that whatever we're doing isn't working is clear in the state of the world. So the starting point, the objective of all of this is peace and happiness. Now, our understanding of peace and happiness, if we're really honest with ourselves, peace and happiness are not physical things. We try to use physical things to reach them, but they're not. Peace, it's a feeling. I feel peaceful. Now, you might again use something physical to have that experience. I feel peaceful when I'm in the mountains. I feel peaceful when I'm in nature. I am happy when I'm eating chocolate. So, using physical things, those same mountains or nature that are making you peaceful can suddenly turn on you. Might be a storm, might be an avalanche, might be a beautiful tree that suddenly falls on you. So it's not a very reliable form source since it's outside of you and very unstable, temporary. So this idea that peace itself isn't physical, these are feeling states. And so we're moving into the realm of non-physical or spiritual. So now I need to understand the realm of non-physical. And the starting point of that realm is the self. So this is relevant to every human being on the planet. We're talking about a concept of the self that will eventually lead to peace or peacelessness, happiness or unhappiness. To think I am a physical being is that physical paradigm, nothing to do with spirituality, but the thing I want is spiritual. So I have to move into a spiritual paradigm to get the thing I want. Spiritual paradigm means I'm not thinking of myself in a physical way. I'm thinking of myself in a non-physical way. And my personal feeling is deep in our hearts, we know it. We know we're not these bodies deep in our hearts. It's just, it may not be emerged. It might be subconscious. It comes out every once in a while in funny ways, that, oh, we shouldn't look at each other by the color of the skin. Well, how else are we going to look at each other? Right? We're talking about spirituality. So we kind of know it. We selectively apply it, but we're not stabilized and we're not quite sure how to do it because we're a little rusty. And that's a strange situation where deep down inside, I know I'm not this body. And yet, on a conscious level, I'm struggling to experience myself that way. It's a very strange situation to find ourselves in. And yet, that's the portal to spirituality, is to experience myself as a spiritual being. And only through spirituality will there be peace and happiness, because peace and happiness are not physical commodities. So really kind of sorting that out in one's own mind.
And maybe that's even just the first part, is just continue to foster that knowing, I mean, I think sometimes we have these unrealistic ideas of what meditation means, but this conversation with myself, no, I know I that does speak to me, that I am a soul. And I think perhaps maybe individuals don't realize the power of just recognizing that knowing, and we skip over that. Skip over that, and maybe we close our eyes or try to expect to go straight into an experience of peace, or whatever virtue. The intent of these sessions are that how peace. So perhaps before we go and have an experience, one last question about this. What was your experience, if you can recall, when you first heard in the course that you're a soul?
It's such a funny thing. I think it's our habits of a back to power of manipulating things in a physical and scientific and logical way are our worst enemies. And children are much better at this than we are. We try to analyze our way into soul consciousness. We try to ritualize our way into soul consciousness. We try to romanticize our way into soul consciousness. We don't just surrender our way or remember our way into soul consciousness. So I remember it kind of blindsided me because I'm just sitting there listening. And I think a very important precursor to all of this is disinterest. There's this, again, power. We think it's very powerful to hold certain beliefs and to, kind of push those beliefs to the maximum. And actually, the greatest power ever, it's a soft power, is to let go. Just to let go so that the truth has an opportunity, finds an opening to get to us. And I think that when listening in the course, there was that disinterest, that that fatigue, that sense of I don't know what I'm doing, a certain humility, that release is needed. A letting go of some sort is needed, such that there was a little opening, just a little chink in the wall of our habits and attachments and beliefs, that point your soul could slip through and hit my intellect in the middle of my eye. Because when I heard it, I don't think I was doing much of anything. I was just going to say, it's like, whoa. And all that came was, this is self-respect. It was so obvious to me. Now I can't, there's no logical or science, but it was just this recognition is the term we use, recognition. Like coming out of amnesia. When someone's coming out of amnesia, what do you do? I mean, we can't say there's a particular technique or method. You just keep getting them to remember until you break through. And to me, meditation is just remembering until there's a breakthrough. And many develop doubts or give up because they want to use an old method of creating the experience. And it's really just disinterest and trust, that I know I'm a soul. Anything else doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense, and it's incompatible with a happy world. Absolutely incompatible to think we're bodies and expect to get to happiness, because if we think we're bodies, then that means we are our gender, our color, our language. It's a total train wreck, so there's no purity, there's no respect, right? So it's a happy world is impossible if we think we are the bodies. So, if that willingness, that trust, that inner knowing, and that disinterest in the old ways, a disinterest, then you're kind of in a good space for that remembering patiently to take effect. And eventually the intellect, which remembers, begins to fire up, begins to work. But for each person, it's a different timeline.
But that inner knowing, and sometimes, we often use in this study the word purity, but for some, they might find it's a word they don't really relate to, but integrity. This inner knowing, do you feel there is a connection from inner knowing and honoring that integrity?
Back to soft power. This is what's so frustrating to many people. There's an inner knowing, there's a recognition, but there is not the power to honor what I know and recognize. And violence, a violent way of handling the self won't work. There has to be that, again, that soft power that actually only can come from God. We have the capacity, but we really need it to be activated by a link with God. God is the master of soft power, remarkable being, very, very subtle, very gentle, very silent, and yet the most powerful being eternally. And so when I link with that person, it's like plugging into a power source that's got a very specific current. I get to be colored by that soft power, and it begins to fill the gap between inner knowing and the capacity to honor what I know. And it's a beautiful experience because there's no violence.
Beautiful topic. We could go on and on and on this
I
evening.
can't believe how quickly time flew.
I know. But I feel I just wanted to reiterate something you'd shared was the how. There was soul consciousness, but also the company of God. And those two pieces are really important for soft power. And perhaps every theme that we will cover, because I think that you get the feeling from souls, they want that experience. And we don't realize we may not be using the right method to ignite those capacities that are so natural inside. So maybe if the remaining time we have, can they go into that experience? I think that souls want to feel the how as well.
So even how I arrange the body in preparation for meditation, it needs to be powerful but not uncomfortable, not violent. And so I have the body supported. I'm able to maintain it comfortably in an alert way. I open up through the front of the body. I'm not collapsing. So that very open, royal feeling, but comfortable. So make sure you're supported. And the eyes are open, but not forced, in a natural way. Sometimes souls even say, I need to take a breath. That's fine too, but not a violent or forced breath, a natural breath. And it's actually the soft phase of the breath, the exhale, that's most powerful in helping the body to settle into the space and cueing my mind to gently move into the present moment. That power of disinterest, again, a soft power, that I'm open to change. The awareness that what I've been doing thus far may not be relevant to where I want to go. But I have faith that there is a capacity inside to embrace a new way. And I make a contract with myself that as I move into this journey towards soft power, towards spirituality, that I will be respectful with the self. I will be patient with the self. I will have deep belief in the self. I will trust the self. And because of those feelings, that contract, I actually will naturally have a sense of discipline, a response of discipline for the self. Just creating that initial contract is a meditation in itself, creating an environment which will blend soft qualities with focus and determination and faith and concentration. So just creating a good inner atmosphere, that contract of respect with the self, is important in moving along with soft power in this journey towards spirituality, towards remembering, towards God, and towards happiness. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you to those online. So, if any questions come up from today's theme, please email us. And we'll close with me slipping away to the back again, and then Judy can just provide some announcements or upcoming sessions.
Happy to. So, of course, tomorrow is Canada Day. So I want to wish anyone and everyone who's observing now or in the future a happy Canada Day. I love what our flag represents. Actually, it's these two bars of red and then this single red leaf in an ocean of white. And red is the color of power. White is the color of purity. So our flag even represents soft power, a power that comes from a pure heart, pure intentions, pure feelings, pure love. So really a wonderful experience going into Canada Day, the soft power. So we wish you a wonderful Canada Day, and we will be back on Thursday with Experience at 6:45 to 7:30, and then 7:35 to 8:15 Raj Yoga Essentials. You're most welcome to join. Uh, Please visit our website for regular programming. We try to keep it up to date. I believe we've just added the Raj Yoga course in Hindi and the Raj Yoga course in English for July. So feel free to visit. Otherwise, I think that's it. Thank you again for joining, and feel free to share any questions or comments you have by email to calgary@ca.brahmakumaris, one word, .org. Om Shanti.